Welcome back to Foster and Grow, everyone, and back from a temporary hiatus just to get a bit of R&R, wasn't it, Gary?
Yeah, it's good to recharge the batteries and find some more beautiful plants to present to you. And we've got one of our favourites here today, don't we, Jared?
Yeah, so today we've got a very beautiful Sedum Morganianum.
Yeah, it's otherwise known as a donkey's tail or a burro's tail, and they actually originate from southern Mexico and Honduras.
Now, so in terms of plant characteristics for the donkey's tail, you'll notice a few things. First of all, they have really beautiful, large, trailing, long stems. They get to about 60 centimetres long in length.
Yes, also 24 inches.
Yep, so quite large once they get to that size. This one's a little bit smaller than that. But further to that, you'll also notice that they get really cute and whimsical grey to kind of green, bluey leaves.
They'll actually flower during summer, so they'll be red or pink in colour, and they look absolutely stunning. So keep an eye out for those.
Yeah, further to that, you can expect that the plant will be quite densely packed in terms of its foliage, and they do actually look a lot like a larger version of a jelly bean.
The other thing is in summer, they also get that weird white chalky wax on them, don't they, as well?
Yeah, so they do this basically to help protect themselves from sun exposure. So just another characteristic you might notice when checking out the plant.
So when it comes to the location for your donkey's tail, there are some really key considerations for this plant. Firstly, it's not a frost-tolerant plant, so if you have temperatures below about 5 degrees Celsius...
Yep, so that's about 41 degrees Fahrenheit.
You will definitely need to protect this plant. So we do get frost here and quite heavy ones at times, so what we've done is we've moved that into our greenhouse so that the plant is protected. That brings us to our second point. You can actually grow this plant both indoors and outdoors depending on your conditions. So if you're going to put it indoors, make sure it's next to a strong source of light. Are there any recommendations we have, Jared, for where you would place one of these plants?
Yeah, so apart from what Gareth was saying with the indoors there, we would suggest that you put them in a hanging pot. The main reason being, aesthetically wise, because they've got the large trailing stems, they look really beautiful when they're in a hanging pot.
Yeah.
But further to that, because they're potted, it also gives you a little bit of flexibility with if you've got more extreme conditions like we do.
Yeah, and that brings us to the final point, which is that if you get very warm summer temperatures, like what we do, you're going to stress this plant and probably kill it. So any temperature above, say, 30 degrees Celsius,
which is about 86 degrees Fahrenheit,
you will need to protect this plant. So we get up to about 40 degrees Celsius in summer here, and the way that we've actually mitigated that issue is via putting it under a shade cloth. It gets a bit of morning sun then, but it's protected from both the midday and afternoon and evening sun. So the reason you will need to give it a little bit of full sun is because it'll keep the plant looking really, really healthy. You get the white sheen on it and the beautiful greeny grey leaves. But yeah, if you give it those sort of conditions and location, you should have a plant that's really, really happy.
Now, so in terms of plant care for the donkey's tail, there's a couple of key considerations that you should make. Now, firstly, watering is very important for them in terms of you don't want to do it too much because they're a little bit susceptible to root rot.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of this, you will be looking to water in winter very sparingly. In autumn and spring, it'll probably be more like once every 2 to 3 weeks. And in summer, if you're in a climate like we are, where it's quite hot, you'll find that you'll probably need to do it up to once a week.
Yeah, there are some telltale signs the plant will give you and other things you can do out there, Jared, to sort of check if it's getting enough water or too much.
Yeah, so as we always say, guys, check the soil and check the leaves. That will give you a bit of an indication on whether you do need to water the plant or not. We do have a video on that elsewhere on YouTube. But further to that, just make sure that basically, you let the soil dry out in between waterings, just so it gets the right amount of moisture.
Yeah, so the optimal growing conditions for your donkey's tail are around about 20 degrees Celsius. So that's about, I think, 71 degrees Fahrenheit. And they also require around about 4 hours of direct sunlight daily. So if you can find a location that gives those sorts of conditions for your plant, it'll be very, very, very happy. Yeah, but they are a little bit more tricky than some other plants with the conditions they need. So,
at least for us, that is just because of the environment we are. So further to that, you will also want to make sure that they have a well-draining soil. We find a mix which has a bit of sand and perlite in it is absolutely optimal for it. And further to that, the other probably major thing with these guys is they're quite sensitive in terms of if you do knock them, sometimes you can knock a couple of leaves off. So just bear that in mind.
And that brings us to our next point. So when it comes to propagation for your donkey's tail, there are two main ways that we'd recommend, aren't there, Jared?
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
So the first way is via a stem cutting. Now you can do this with a pair of secateurs or scissors, or we've actually bumped past this plant several times when we're moving it, and you do actually sometimes lose an entire stem off the main body. So what we do though, because that's all propagation, we'll pop that on a windowsill or in a greenhouse, and here's something I prepared earlier.
After a bit of time, once they've got a bit of roots, we can basically repot them.
Yeah, so it'll take about a month for the cutting to get the roots, and then you can essentially pot them and you'll have a new plant. The second way is via a leaf. So again, if you were to move this plant or bump past it, you will 100% knock these leaves off of that plant. But the great thing is, then you can make new plants via those leaves. So again, similar sort of technique with it. You just, again, pop that in a greenhouse or on a windowsill for around about a month.
Just let them dry out, make sure they don't get too wet in that period.
Exactly. This one's got a tiny little baby, absolutely adorable on top of it. We'll put a close-up.
We'll make sure we give you a good close-up of that, guys, just so you can see it a bit better.
Yeah, and then fingers crossed we'll nurture that through to be an entire plant. So obviously, may not be quite as successful with a leaf cutting.
And much slower as well.
And much slower because it's much smaller. However, I mean, you can see how many leaves are on that plant, and we've had success doing propagation via both a leaf and via a stem. So we wish you luck in your propagation.
Now, so we do have one last tip for the day, and what would that be, Gareth?
Yeah, so when you are looking for your pot for your amazing donkey's tail, try to ensure that it has a thick lip on it or a rounded edge.
Yeah, and why would that be?
So if you were to get a thinner edged pot, you're much more likely to lose your trailing stems off the side of the plant. So the rounded edges just ensure that they're much less likely to get their stem pinched. So that's a nice little tip for you.
Yeah, so that ends it for today, but we just want to put a big thank you out for everyone who's thrown us support so far, and if you have liked the content, please give us a like or give us a subscribe, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Yeah, and we will have another video coming out very, very soon, so make sure you keep a lookout for that. See yous.